Indigenous communities around the world have faced persecution, genocide, and ridicule, yet have persevered. Many people across the world focus on the treatment of Native people in the United States, but many other countries have Native populations that have faced persecutions. Today, we'll be focusing on the Native populations in both Russia and the United States. In Russia, there are 47 groups considered to be indigenous and are protected by the government. According to an article by Cultural Survival, in Russia, the requirements to be considered an indigenous group is to be less than 50,000 people, maintain the traditional way of life, live in remote areas, and identify as a distinct ethnic group. There are groups like the Yakutas, also known as the Sakas, and the Buryats and Komis that have been disqualified as a result of their larger populations. There are 24 other ethnic groups that are acknowledged as titular nations or national identities but are not given protection by the Russian government. In the United States, there are 574 federally recognized Indian nations, and there may be more that are recognized at the state level. Around 229 of these nations are found in Alaska. These federally recognized nations receive their recognition from treaties, acts of Congress, executive orders, and federal court decisions. Of the groups in Russia that are recognized as indigenous, their populations range from the Enets, which have 350 persons, to the Nenets, which have just under 30,000 persons, as was recorded in 2014. In the United States, the largest group of federally recognized indigenous persons is the Navajo Nation, with over 700,000 members, and the smallest is the Augustine Band of Cahuilla Indians, which has a population of 8 persons as of 2002, but it's currently rising. Fun fact, the land that hosts the famous outdoor festival Coachella is the land of the Cahuilla people. Indigenous persons in Russia are not protected as they should be under Article 69. Due to corruption and capitalistic interests of the Russian government, indigenous persons find their rights being sacrificed in lieu of more appealing issues. For example, in resource-rich northern areas, indigenous groups find that their rights have had to take a back seat to the interests of mining and excavation groups. A similar trend can be seen in the United States, as Native persons continue to fear that their land will be stolen like it was in early American history. According to the Moscow Times, a study was published this year that shows that most indigenous groups have experienced a decline in their populations in the last 10 years. The invasion of Ukraine has been cited as a reason for some of the decline in these groups, and it will continue to contribute to the decline in indigenous populations as long as it continues. Members of indigenous communities have gone to fight in the war on behalf of Russia, but the loss of their lives affects the populations of their indigenous groups far more than it does the population of Russia. While some American Indian nations have seen growth in their populations in recent years, many Native Americans are worried about the likely overturning of the Indian Child Welfare Act, which prohibited the removal of Native American children from their families after courts found that there was indisputable evidence of this happening. The overturning of this act allows for further legal discrimination as a result of the removal of protections. It also serves to invalidate the struggle and the abuse that these Native people have suffered. This act has provided 45 years of protection to Native children, and its removal could further ridicule and prejudice that Native people still face today. In both Russia and the United States, indigenous groups still face persecution, ridicule, prejudice, and harm as a result of harmful rhetoric that lives on. While many of these groups are recognized and provided with federal protections, they still have to fight with capitalistic interests of the government over their resource-rich land. Along with this, indigenous groups in both countries have small populations, and a lack of federal protections could lead to the end of these nations. The immediate future for the Native groups in Russia and the United States seem to be in danger as a result of the overturning of rules, economic values, and the war in Ukraine. Hopefully soon, the Native people of both countries will be able to live comfortably on their historic land, being protected and not persecuted.